listening to them, and then sharing some of my power with them. And so Angelo is one of those people, and I am just so honored to get to work with you and look forward to the years ahead. I'm thrilled to be here. I want to thank Bob for having me. When I first met Bob after I was appointed by Governor Newsom, we had such an exciting conversation about what we needed to do to better connect Californians to jobs with dignity and security. And what better way to spend Labor Day week than here, diving into the challenge of paving career pathways for Californians. My own path was an unlikely one to this position. My mom braved a 30-day voyage on a cargo ship from China to the United States because she couldn't afford a passenger ticket. And then she got here, worked odd jobs, and then eventually got a union job working for LA County, which she did for almost 40 years. My dad also worked a full-time job, and then my parents had a small business that they worked mostly in the evenings, saving everything that they could so that their two daughters could go to college. Like so many children of immigrants, I grew up translating for my parents, writing letters, making phone calls, navigating the adult world and adult interactions. And as I grew up, I realized that law is really a language, and those who speak it get to decide who gets what in our society, who gets protected and who doesn't, who gets to vote, marry, work, march in the streets, cross the border, and who doesn't. So I went to law school to become a translator in the language of law for those who were marginalized, discriminated against, and exploited. Less than a year after I became a lawyer, 72 immigrants from Thailand were discovered working behind barbed wire and under armed guard in an apartment complex in a suburb of Los Angeles. Some of you may remember their case. And once discovered, the workers were not freed. They had worked up to 18 hours a day, sewing garments until their vision was blurred and their fingers were raw, and then they dragged their tired bodies upstairs to sleep in this apartment complex. And then they were taken by federal immigration officials and thrown into a federal prison. I, along with a small group of activists, fought for their freedom. We sat in and refused to leave until we were allowed to speak to the workers. And then after helping them to find housing, jobs, clothes, medical attention, we filed a lawsuit against not only their captors, but also against the companies that they had been sewing for. The workers bravely told their own stories in the case. In demanding justice, they rejected the message they had been told their whole lives, that they should keep their heads down and know their place. Our case was about imagining a different future. It has been the greatest privilege of my professional life to support workers, mainly workers in industries such as garment, restaurant, janitorial, and caregiving, to use the law to imagine a different future. These are workers who work long hours, often 2 jobs, who take the bus, often in the rain, who bring their children to meetings because they cannot afford the luxury of childcare, who do not complain and do not give up. They made me believe in my voice, and when Governor Newsom appointed me to be the labor secretary, I promised those workers that I would do everything in my power to make sure that workers and their families could imagine a different future. Fortunately, this is an administration that embraces and elevates that vision. On International Workers' Day this year, May 1, Governor Newsom announced the formation of a Future of Work Commission. And on Friday, he appointed its members, leaders from labor, business, tech, industry, low-wage work, venture capital, and government. The commission will help our state get ready for the years and decades ahead to make sure that advances in technology respect the dignity of work and of workers. That we view automation not as on a collision course with jobs, but as an opportunity for building an economy that works for every Californian. Fighting income and wealth inequality and ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to succeed is the defining economic challenge of our time, and California is going to face it head on. While there is much talk about how AI will destroy jobs and robots will take the place of humans, the Commission takes this as our principle. There is nothing inevitable about the future of our economy. California's economy is the 5th largest in the world. It generates enormous wealth and prosperity, but as Governor Newsom said in an op-ed on Labor Day, the wealthiest have grown wealthier, the middle class and the poor have grown poorer, corporate profits have gone through the roof, while worker wages have remained in the basement. The Commission will focus on policies and interventions that reverse these trends. We will establish a new social compact, one based on an economy that is both innovative and inclusive, where the problem is not just the lack of skills of people seeking jobs, but the lack of quality jobs for the full talent of California's people. I love the theme of this conference, strategy into reality. I've spent much of my career working to turn good ideas and strategies into reality. And I want to share 3 ways that we are doing this today. The first is the Highroad Strategy, developed under the great vision of Tim Rainey, Executive Director of the California Workforce Development Board, also my colleague and friend. The Highroad Strategy has 5 components: regional scale, job quality, worker voice, equity, and a commitment to climate. It starts with the best jobs, those that are driving regional employment in various industries. It targets companies that care not just about short-term profits for shareholders, but also skills, mobility, just working conditions, and a long-term health of communities. It supports planning with workers and management at the table, jointly assessing current workforce gaps and addressing future change. It invests in and connects low-income and disadvantaged workers to the best jobs, breaking down barriers to employment. And it focuses on industry sectors and occupations on the front lines of California's transition to a carbon-neutral economy. The second is the creation of a new position within the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, Chief Deputy Secretary of Strategic Enforcement and Initiatives. We are not just talking about strategic work and bold initiatives. We are rejecting business as usual and making creativity and innovation how we do business. And that Chief Deputy Secretary is Yun-Sun Park, and she is here with us today. Third is the creation of a Future of Work department. I want to acknowledge here the extraordinary leadership of Dan Rounds and Dennis Petrie, who I know are also here. And we are working to turn this vision into reality. The department, for the first time, consolidates all of the workforce functions that fall under labor at the state level into a single department under common leadership. If we think of our state as a house, our state-level workforce functions currently live in different rooms. Workforce strategy in the den, services in the living room, apprenticeships in the upstairs bedroom, and employer training in the guest room. We put them into separate rooms, and then we wonder why they don't talk to each other. Instead of accepting this as the natural course of things, we are breaking down these walls, and we're putting them all together at the kitchen table. And this work has never been more important, not only because we have a crisis in our economy, but because we have a crisis in our democracy, which feeds and is fed by a growing lack of faith in our institutions of government. For workers, this justified fear of government, and state, federal, and local are often lumped together, fueled by anti-immigrant, anti-poor, and racist policies, means that workers are ever more vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. And those left out of the economy are ever more vulnerable to staying left out. When I came into government, people inside and outside of my agency insisted that we couldn't combat wage theft because workers were too scared. But from what I've learned from a lifetime of working alongside working people for their rights is that it's not their fear that holds us back, it's ours. Similarly, people say that the workforce system is too big, too entrenched, too stuck in its ways to change. But people like Bob Lantern know better. People in this room are doing better, and we cannot let the fear of change hold us back. So I end with a commitment and a challenge. My commitment to you is to do my part. We are taking bold steps to change the way we work, to fix what's broken, and to imagine a different future. My challenge to you is that we realize this work together. In our time here together, at this great meeting of great minds, let's challenge one another to think differently about what we do, offer to help make something better, partner in a new way to achieve more collectively than we can achieve separately. My challenge to you is to walk away at the end of this conference with a concrete answer to the question, what am I going to do differently? And what am I going to demand that this community, my community, do better? It has been said that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. And we have the opportunity to do justice. We have an opportunity to be transformative. At the end of this conference, how will you answer the question, what am I doing in my work to be transformative? As Labor Secretary, I get to work day after day with people who inspire me and make me better. And I wanted you to hear from them today. So in closing, I just want to say, if future of work is going to mean anything in California, we want it to lift people out of poverty and create opportunities for Californians, not just to live, not just to experience minimum standards, but to truly flourish and to thrive. And I look forward to making this a reality in California with all of you. Thank you very much.